Hey, all right, so I want to go over a couple of things here. We kind of touched upon it in the first part of this section, but I want to go back over the textures and the texture settings and the different type of textures, because you're going to go over this again and again and again. Bringing in different textures, dealing with alpha channels, trying to understand how Unity decodes the information that's contained inside of a texture. So the first thing I want to go over is generating a normal map from a black and white texture. All right, so I have this splat texture map here. It's a black and white image. Now I want to create some height information from this. So up here under texture type, and a lot of times I want to have this as a duplicate texture. So what I'll do is I have a regular texture. I have my splat texture map. It's a JPEG. I'll duplicate it and I'll call this splat underscore NRML. And what am I saying there? I'm saying that this one is the one I'm using for a normal map, just in case I need to use the other black and white image for something else so that it's interpreted as a texture. Oops, that's the wrong one here. Here is splat and splat normal. So the splat normal I have not done anything to yet. You should be exactly the same, but a lot of times I'm going to use this texture multiple times. So in Unity you have to duplicate the actual source image just because it can't have one image that interpolates two different ways. It's one of the things about Unity that can be kind of annoying sometimes because it seems like you should share one resource and interpolate it different ways. Alright, so what I'm going to do here for my normal is I'm going to say it's a normal map. And it's automatically going to say create from grayscale. Why? Because it doesn't have normal information. There are such things as true normal maps. We're not going to really get into those at all, but you can create genuine normal maps from two 3D objects, and you can do the offsets between the geometry. It's a very complex process. All right, let's go ahead and hit apply. And you can see it's generated normal information for me based on my height information. Now let's go here and let's just replace this normal map with this one. And you can see, there it is. Now you can see that it's been created. It's created a normal map. And I'm just going to click on this. 0.25, I think it's pretty high for a normal map. That means that the offset would be pretty high. And let's grab that material. And we can change our height here, how much offset it is from the surface. You can see that we've created those divots based on that splat map. And of course, it's going to tile itself with the material tiling properties. All right, so we took a black and white image and turned it into a height map. Now, one of the things I can see here is I kind of like it to be the opposite. Instead of divoted here, I'd kind of like it to be raised up. How do we do that? Well, we'd have to invert the value. And let's see if we can, there we go, all right. We inverted the value by making it negative. Let's make it negative 0.5 here, shall we? All right. So basically I can turn an any map into an outie map. And that might be a little bit better, 3.3. So it's kind of a nice quick way to reverse one of your height map, your normal maps that you created. Okay, now the next thing I want to show you is how to work with an alpha channel. All right, so let's grab, and I have a TIFF file, and you can see down here it's a TIFF. Now, when you import a file with an alpha channel, right, you can use it inside of your diffuse. So if you want something that has a value that is transparent, but you also want to get the color value from it, you create an alpha channel. And we can see this alpha channel here by hitting the black and white button. This will give us the alpha value, which is just the black and white value. And that's a separate channel that is saved out with the TIFF file, and you can make those in Photoshop very easily. All right, so now that we have an alpha value, and we don't even need this alpha from grayscale or alpha as transparency, we should be able to drop this and make sure that we have the, I'm going to delete this one for you. I'm going to delete the JPEG so that when you look over the materials, you'll just see the TIFF file. Now I can drag this over to my texture here, and let's get rid of that specular map. That's going to cause us some problems. And for some reason our normal map is still, oh no, okay, that's a grid. All right, so let's also get rid of that normal map. And we're going to make this transparent. All right, so now what I'm going to have to do here is make sure that my alpha is the transparency. And it looks like one of the things I did here with this alpha is that I kind of inverted it, which was my fault. And one thing you're not going to be able to see is, let's just create a new game object so we can see where we're seeing through. Are we seeing that through the transparency? And you can see that the transparency, I made a mistake by not flipping my alpha channel. And you can see I have Photoshop open here. All I have to do is grab this and hit Command I, and that will invert it where this is opaque and the rest of it is transparent. And I'm just going to save that over. And here's a good example of dynamically changing our texture maps on the fly. So let's just save. Replacing the file that's already in there. And boom, as soon as I open up Unity, it will make that adjustment for me. Now, let's select our object here, and because we have specularity, let's just turn that off here. There we go. And actually, we can use our splat with alpha as our specularity channel. You can see it will only become specular where the area is light. However, I'm going to get rid of that. And this is going to be more classic appearance. What we want is the basic transparency. Let's cut down that. All right, so we can see underneath it. And this area is cut out. So we've taken the alpha channel and used it for a certain map. And you can see those, it's casting a shadow. I can turn my shadow casting off from my object, so you can just see the object underneath it, but we've got a transparency happening in our shader here. All right, now that's the second thing I wanted to show you. Now the third thing I want to show you is sprites. So a lot of times you want to make 2D elements, and we're not going to do a lot of GUI stuff, but in order to have texture show up properly for GUI, we're going to change it to a sprite type. So once I choose sprite for a material, that means that it gives us this little piece of information here with it, but it also now allows us to use it with our 2D texture UI materials. So if I create a UI image, and like I said, we're not going to get into UI too much, but to know that in order to have this as an image up here, we have to have this as a sprite. So I can put an image in my UI. As you can see, it's showing up down here at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. I cannot put an image in my UI if I don't make it a sprite. So just looking over the texture properties, you always have to determine that this is going to be a sprite if you're going to have it as part of any 2D rendering aspect of your game, which usually happens in the UI. So if you have buttons and things that are going to stay static with the screen, you want to make them sprites. All right, so this just a recap here. We went through understanding how to make a normal map from a black and white texture. I click on normal map and hit apply, and it'll generate height information based on my 2D black and white information. We also learned how to import an object with an alpha channel. Where did that go? There we go. And how to show off that alpha channel by clicking this black and white to color image. So you can see the alpha information here, and you can see the color information or the diffuse information. And you can see the transparency will be in the background if I say alpha is transparency. And last, we learned how to select an object and convert it into a sprite for 2D use. All right, so that's it. Just a little bit about texture settings. When you're importing assets and textures, you have to be pretty specific about how they're going to be imported and interpolated because the material editor has a lot of properties that it reads from the alpha channels and a lot of properties that it needs to understand before it can do certain things. So you really want to be careful about how you're interpolating those textures. And sometimes you may have one texture you delete multiple, you duplicate several times in order to get 3 different interpolated textures from that single texture. And that's a really important thing about the Unity engine is that you need several textures to get the same appearance. And sometimes you just have to duplicate the one that you have so that you can interpolate it differently based on the texture type.